My students are amazed by Assyrians. Are they the most brutal empire in history? Impaling and terrorizing their enemies, they perfected the art of torture and extreme tactics. That's what everybody typically gets excited about. But I found some new facts about the start, the small city-state of Ashur in Mesopotamia. So how do they rise to be the world's first superpower by 671 BC? This is lesson number 17 in your ancient history course. So first, I'll teach you the origins of the Assyrians from peaceful Mesopotamian traders. Second, I'll show you their fearsome military power for this new holy war. As they rise up, third, you will learn what makes the Neo-Assyrian Empire the ruthless, terrorizing superpower, the first one. And finally, let's analyze the secrets of that Assyrian war machine that breaks. The empire comes crashing down, and who is there to take over? Welcome to Classical Kingdoms. I'm Mr. Hall, and your complete Assyrian Empire lesson starts now. Assyrian history starts with Ashur. Ashur is the small city-state. This is northern Mesopotamia in the Fertile Crescent. It's modern-day Iraq, kind of in the Kurdistan area. This land between the rivers is the best civilization cradle that you could ever come up with. Flooding rivers, agriculture, the success. They're close to the Silk Road trade route, main line. So this is a successful place. Their story begins with business and trade. It's not Ashur, the dominating force. So for centuries, Ashur is overshadowed by other powerful empires to the south, like the Akkadian Empire, Sargon the Great. That's covered in lesson number 7. And the Fertile Crescent is covered in lesson number 2. So, classicalkingdoms.com has that full course experience to help you ensure you have the complete understanding. But here we are. Around 2200 BC, Assyrian rulers were typically just governors. They were serving the foreign kings like Sargon, part of an empire. And this long experience of always having somebody ruling over you, what does that do? What would your view be if you were constantly a part of someone else's empire? So we think this plants some deep seeds, desires for independence, because by 2025 BC, Ashur has broken free to become their own independent city-state. But do you think that's because of an army or a battle or a win? It's actually just a time of kind of a power vacuum in a way. There was no replacement for Sargon's empire, so this first taste of prominence was peaceful. They're building that trade network. It's close to the Silk Road. It's a very sophisticated trade network that, the evidence of that is still present today. If you look, I found these pictures of a New Year's parade and celebration. This area of Kurdistan in northern Iraq is still a very diverse kind of mix of people. It's kind of a hot spot still. And it makes sense that in this ancient time, the trade routes, it's such a crossroads. Its interconnectedness brings different people and different cultures. So let's think of these early Assyrian merchants kind of like one big ancient family business. They're going to send their donkey caravans hundreds of miles, 800 miles away, all the way to Anatolia. That's modern-day Turkey. And they export textiles, export tin. Oh, yes, remember tin, because it's the Bronze Age, and you have to have 12% tin mixed with your copper. And they were part of the trade route that helped connect people, and silver and gold. So they're special merchants. So they set up these special merchant colonies called Karam. A colony is kind of a spin-off. Remember other important colonies, especially when it comes to trade. It's going to be about trade. So look at Kanesh. Kanesh was a very important city as a colony, and we've known this because of 23,000 clay tablets. Why was writing invented? Lesson number 6, because of business records. So 23,000 clay tablets show Kanesh and the trade routes, and their success was actually very fragile. They had this wealth, but don't you need an army to protect it? The wealth without the strength is kind of an open invitation for conquest, and Ashur needs to watch it, because here comes a series of foreign powers. The Hurrian kingdom of Mitanni held Assyria as a vassal state. What is a vassal state? It's what we said earlier. When you're a vassal, you have a lord above you. And so as a vassal state, you need to pay tribute. Well, it could be a period of humiliation that really, fired them up. And later, the Assyrian identity is forged to become militaristic and ruthless. It's coming. Intolerant of these rivals that they have. They had to learn the brutal lesson by being dominated. These other civilizations, these other kingdoms that are making them into vassals. So what would you have done in this situation? It is definitely a classical journey into the history, virtue, and wonder of how the Assyrians then find a way over the next 1,000 years to build themselves up. Now, in the second segment, we're looking at nearly 1,000 years. This is a period when Mesopotamia doesn't have a consistent, powerful, dominating force. We've had Sargon, we've had Hammurabi. And for Assyria, the change starts happening around 1365 BC with a king named Ashur-uballit the First. He saw the Mitanni kingdom, their overlord, was weakening. He saw an opportunity, so he seized the moment to declare Assyria's independence and immediately goes on the offense. He attacks, he expands Assyrian territory, and then does something incredibly bold. He writes a letter to the Egyptian pharaoh. When is this again? What year? It's the time of Egyptian domination in the New Kingdom of Egypt. That's lesson number 12. The New Kingdom of Egypt, they've expanded their map to be the largest. They've touched Mesopotamia trade routes, so they know each other. So why is he writing a letter to the Egyptian pharaoh? He says, I demand to be treated as an equal great king. This was Assyria announcing its arrival on the world stage. But I don't know if that's going to work that way. The announcement is met with a new challenger in the area. This new era is driven by some aggressive warrior kings with new imperial ideology. What is imperial ideology? So imperial is a word that means empire. So Assyria is not the only one thinking empire. They should make an empire. Egypt has a cool empire. We're getting ready for the Bronze Age collapse again. It's happened so many times. But for the Assyrians, this ideology, imperial ideology, a belief that we need to build an empire. We need to have a big map like Egypt. So why not elevate their national god? We've done this before. Ashur. Ashur is the name of their national god. Ashur was the name of the original city-state. This is Ashur. We're going to hear this name again. And from a local deity now to the supreme god of conquest, we have Ashur. And the king is now his chief priest. He is a priest king. Military campaigns are no longer just for security or trade routes. They are now holy wars. And it became a religious duty to expand the land ruled by the god Ashur. He has sovereignty. This is a fusion of religion and military, and this becomes an engine of Assyrian imperialism. And you should wonder, who else does it like this? Who else will make kind of this holy war out of it? And there are other civilizations. So add that to your history notebook about how you could elevate a god, how that could make things holy as you fight and expand your power. The peak of this era comes under King Tukulti-Ninurta I. Look at the conflict through his eyes, because he achieves what everyone thought was impossible. He conquers Babylon. Babylon! That was Hammurabi's Babylon. And he is disrupting what the power used to be and the importance of that city. That was also a holy city. Didn't they elevate the god Marduk back in Hammurabi's day? So he sacks that holy city and commits a supreme act of sacrilege. What is sacrilege? It's going against a religion. It's like offending the religion. It's kind of showing something bad, like dominating. He stole the statue of Babylon's chief god, Marduk. In class, I used to have a duck, and it got named Marduk. This is going back to the 90s. And this lesson would come around, and it was a mallard duck with a pencil holder. And kids would steal it and hide it and hold ransom and write letters in secret code to try to make me get it back. Sacrilege. In the shocking victory, established Assyria. Assyria is now the supreme power of the land. But what a price. Kind of a terrible price, because now deep resentment is seated in other places, like not just Babylon. They would have deep-seated resentment, but also amongst his own people. He eventually was assassinated by his own son, and that death triggers a period of decline for Assyria now, made worse by a chaos sweeping across the region. You know what it is. The late Bronze Age collapse. The collapse of the Bronze Age. In this case, the Arameans are coming and invading and attacking and not establishing any superpower. So Assyria is going to shrink back to its heartland. It's weak but not broken, waiting for the next chance to rise. And you've probably seen something like this before, that the city-state just needs to be patient. So skip ahead a few centuries to Nineveh, very key and important Assyrian capital, and the story of Jonah, the religion of Nineveh, these holy wars. Jonah is going to come. So this is a biblical story. There's a book of Jonah, and he is sent by God to ask these Assyrians to repent. He's a prophet. He has to go to the great city of Nineveh. So what does Jonah do? He goes the opposite direction. This Jewish prophet tries to get away. He is scared of these Assyrians. He knows their deep-seated resentment of other people. They're trying to build their empire back, and he doesn't want any part of this city. So while he's sailing away, there's a storm. He gets thrown in the water, and a fish swallows him. For 3 days, Jonah is in the belly of a fish. So we're seeing another religious connection, because the Nineveh, they have some local gods that have to do with fish, a great fish. So when Jonah gets thrown up, vomited by the fish, and, has a change of hearts, his religious calling is to go to Nineveh now and tell Nineveh to repent, to not be evil, that a great fish had thrown him up. Well, there's a word for great fish in Hebrew that kind of matches a name, Dagon, which is a major god, a fertility god, worshipped in Mesopotamia and in this region. So people make this connection, and it's similar to the plagues that Egypt dealt with in the New Kingdom lesson, where this religious message coming from the Jewish people, from the monotheistic people, from God, through Jonah, to repent, to not be wicked, don't be evil, And we're using your local gods as a way for you to understand that. The book's primary theme, Jonah's story, is a very radical one. That now here's God trying to give compassion. Say, don't be evil. Don't do bad things. And it's not limited just to the Jews. It's coming out here to the Assyrians, who are not monotheistic. They are not part of the Jewish people, but they're being offered God's compassion, the message through Jonah. It is a memorable image. The Dagon, the deity Dagon, had led to this realization. So they do repent, and that includes King Ashur-dan III and all the people, and they repented in sackcloth and ashes, and it's not going to last long. But Dagon is widely respected and known as a fertility and grain god. It's a part of the culture that people could understand, and it shows the connection that these people have and an awareness of the Jews, which may come back in a very severe way. Jonah would have left Nineveh by 753 BC, overlapping with the Ashur-dan III's rule. And those days are behind because in segment 3, we will get a new Assyrian king with a new vision. Remember that imperial ideology. Well, by 745 BC, the guy's name is Tiglath-Pileser, and he is the new architect of Assyria's rebirth. Good marketing, right? Good messaging. It's the Neo-Assyrian Empire. You see that in a lot of sources, and he's not just a conqueror. He's a revolutionary reformer. But imperial ideology is kind of built on a critical flaw. You know, all these ancient civilizations rely on farming, and most people are farmers. So they don't have time to fight wars when they've got to plant their crops. They've got to harvest their crops. Tiglath-Pileser understood that this is a problem. It's kind of a challenge for a true empire. You need a bigger year-round, a bigger schedule for your army. So his most important reform is going to create the world's first professional standing army. So you no longer had to rely on farmers who are, they're done planting for the season and they can come out and fight. We've got a permanent state-funded military that could wage war all year round. Kind of an incredible disruption. He also completely centralizes the government. He breaks up these large provinces that were typically run by powerful noble families. He replaces them with his appointed officials that were loyal to only him. So these reforms are going to kind of unleash a century. It's going to set up beyond him a century of conquest unlike anything the world had ever seen. They're going to have a big map, bigger than Egypt's. This is going to bring a societal shift now. And it's really the importance of the Assyrians, why you're having a lesson on the Assyrians. This is the rise of the Sargonid dynasty, Sargon. Sargon's name is back because we have 4 brilliant but ruthless. Now we get into the ruthless. They are extreme. These kings will forge this large empire. This map is huge. And the world has never seen a superpower like this. Egypt did not do this. They could have, headed in this direction, but they had to have the Bronze Age collapse. Blame it on the Sea Peoples. But here, Sargon II expands the empire to its greatest extent. So conquering the northern kingdom of Israel, 722 BC is a major date, overlapping different civilizations. 722 BC, deporting the lost 10 tribes, the 10 tribes of Israel. That's the 10 northern tribes. So going back to the lesson on Saul, David, and Solomon, the kingdoms that were established there in lesson 14 and 15, they've been split up. They've been captured, and the 10 in the north are dispersed. This is the beginning of the diaspora, the dispersion of these tribes all over. 722 BC, they're deported. And his son, Sennacherib, moved the capital of the Assyrians to Nineveh. And he made it the most magnificent city in the world. He crushed rebellions like the rebellion in Judah. Judah was resisting. There were 12 tribes. Remember the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel. That was the covenant, lesson 10. And they only had the brief time under David and Solomon and Saul before him of a strong kingdom. And this is the disruption. They split off. They have two kingdoms in the south. Judah basically is the strong holdout against the Assyrians. And so Sennacherib, right, we see it in these reliefs. These reliefs, it's like posting it on social media. What are reliefs? These reliefs, this is art that's been carved. And it's Sennacherib telling the story of these difficult holdouts, Judah, the southern tribes that wouldn't give in to the Assyrians. And so look at what Sennacherib puts besides the pictures, which are quite disturbing. The violence, the extreme terror tactics. Sennacherib says, this is the inscription carved in here. Sennacherib, king of the universe, king of Assyria, sits on a throne, and the spoils of Lachish and paraded before him. That was the key battle. That was like second city to Jerusalem, Lachish. And we see these. It's in the British Museum, but the images were put in his temple so that people knew his power and his authority. And you see the ruthlessness starting, the messaging of terror. Next, the leader, Ashur-uballit, reversed the policy that had destroyed Babylon. He rebuilds Babylon on a grander scale than ever before. And by 671 BC, from the greatness of their empire in Babylon and across Mesopotamia and the Fertile Crescent, it stretches to the other end. The Assyrians conquer Egypt. 671 BC. This is when I would make the kids color in this map because it's huge, and it would be the biggest empire we've seen. They conquer Egypt. The Assyrian Empire is now the largest superpower state the world has ever seen. And skip ahead to the last great king, Ashur-uballit. Ashur-uballit Ashur, the root word. He inherited this vast empire, and he was a warrior and a scholar. He sacked the great city of Thebes in Egypt, and he destroyed the rival kingdom of Elam. But his greatest legacy was creating a library of Ashur-uballit at Nineveh, where he gathered all the knowledge around Mesopotamia, and to control the empire, they perfected this library, and it's like their gift, gift to the trade routes and the understanding of what they've done. Now, to control the empire, he also developed this mass deportation system. He uproots people. He wants the people to be uprooted away from their local, loyal, comfortable homes. Like, how do you feel when you're being ripped away? You're out of your home. You feel displaced. In the hope that it breaks the loyalties. But this efficient and brutal system, it actually inspires a lasting hatred, a deep resentment of everyone that they ruled. So are you starting to get a sense that it's not a recipe, or they're not building something, they're not building a legacy that people can really, get on board with? And if you're thinking that, you have wisdom in your journey. So if you haven't already done so, click the like button and don't forget to subscribe. We don't want you to miss all the other lessons, Classical Kingdoms. Let's look at this war machine, because everyone's heard how terrorizing they are, how they used extreme tactics. Is this Assyrian army invincible? Was it their technology, their training, or something much darker? The foundation of the Assyrian Empire was their military success. That's what they brought. Is that sustaining? 3 centuries of really impressive power. They were the most sophisticated, innovative military force, but it was a terrifying military force. What do I mean by that? This professional army did have technological superiority. We've come out of the Bronze Age. Iron weapons are a thing, but the terrorizing, brutal, psychological strategy that the Assyrians deployed, it was really something. And it should make you wonder, how often is terror used against people? Their engineers were masters of siege warfare. Siege warfare. What is siege warfare? Well, you would build your city on a hill, play king of the hill. You would put walls around it, but you would not use that hill unless it had a water source. So that's the way ancient city-states always work. But siege warfare is when your walls are surrounded by an army. And this could take months, it could take years for them to penetrate those walls. Siege warfare. This is now the Assyrians finding ways to get inside your walls. They were relentless. They would warn you psychological terror in advance to try to get you to surrender. Because when you saw their siege equipment, their battering rams, they would tunnel underneath. They would try to get underneath your walls. They had an armored beast of a kind of a battering ram that smashes better than anyone else. And they created this kind of, horrible sense that it's futile. It's inevitable they're going to get inside. So they would threaten so much, any resistance at all. Resistance is futile. Any resistance was going to cause extreme punishments, tortures for the inhabitants. So if you don't, people would surrender before they even fought. Beyond their battering ram technology, they saw weaponizing terror really worked. People would surrender in advance. The famous historian A.T. Olmsted said calculated frightfulness. Who else uses that? Who uses calculated frightfulness? This is a deliberate state policy. The Assyrians designed a crushing, calculated frightfulness so that anyone who resisted the Assyrians would pay an unbelievable price. They didn't just defeat their enemies, and this is where it gets very gruesome. You can use your imagination. You can see it in these illustrations, the reliefs, the message. They made these reliefs so that people would know. They would find out. They would see that. But annihilating cities, impaling the people that resisted, putting them on poles. Ashur-uballit boasted some of these horrible torture techniques, like flaying the chiefs alive, covering pillars with their skins, burning thousands of captives, cutting off noses, cutting off ears. That was pretty common. Poking out their eyes. And they didn't do this in secret. This was propaganda. They wanted everyone to know what happens when you resist the Assyrian army. And do you believe that this is a recipe of success? I said that earlier. Is it an ideology that you could get on board with? Is this a foundation of a future society, a civilization that is built on virtue? I say not. We have lots of evidence. These horrific scenes are carved. There's reliefs, there's stories, there's quotes, but the message is clear. Don't defy the Assyrians. So what could possibly go wrong with such calculated terror? This is an empire that doesn't have any friends. Their subjects are literally just waiting for a chance to revenge. They're not building a network of trade and interconnectedness. They're building resentment. And after the death of that last great king, Ashur-uballit, the empire was just crippled by an outbreak of civil war everywhere. So it's it's kind of amazing how huge the map is and how quickly it just breaks apart. The two greatest enemies of the Assyrians, the Babylonians to the south and the Medes to the east, that's like the Persians, as soon as they saw this weakness, they formed an alliance and they could sweep in and destroy. And then they got a little bit of help by science, a climate change event, because the region is struck by a multi-decade mega drought. So this causes massive crop failures, famine. It weakens the empire from within. And by 612 BC, a date you should remember, 612 BC is the end. It's kind of a shocking crash. It's fast. It's also very permanent. This is, kind of when I teach my kids about one-hit wonders. A one-hit wonder. The Assyrians don't offer a contribution to the development of Western civilization. They did establish a large map. But now the allied armies of Babylonia, the Medes, they destroy Nineveh. They burn it to the ground. And this empire that terrorized the world for 300 years, it's gone. It's gone. So we'll watch to see what happens next with the Babylonians, the new powers in this area. And we'll watch these northern parts of Mesopotamia. And do any of these, does Ashur, does Nineveh ever matter again? As we wonder about power fading, what will you gain from the story? What will you carry forward from this age? The Assyrians teach us a timeless human truth, that power built on brutality is really brittle. It may seem strong and it creates a large map, but it's filled with your enemies. So in our classical journey, we pursued the good, the true, and the beautiful. And this Assyrian model is really an extreme version of vice and cruelty, and not a virtue of justice. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history. Some classical truth for your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.